This podcast is brought to you by Valena and by Vizard.ai.
Alrighty, welcome everybody to the Arete Podcast. We've got a very special episode today. I'm joined today by Ian Ray of Stretch2Go. He is you're a fascia trainer or just a trainer in general? I assume stretch is in the name, so.
Yes, correct. So I'll be considered fascial stretch therapist. But yes, that'll be my title.
Awesome. Yeah, and those of you that subscribe to the podcast already are familiar with fascia, thanks to our great episode with Kyler of Self Health Fitness. But Ian reached out by watching that podcast and wanted to talk some more about it. And I mean, I'll talk to anybody, obviously. And I'm really into this, the fascial and mobility training. Tyler introduced me to it, but now I've gone down a rabbit hole, as I'm sure many of you have. So, welcome, Ian. Thanks for coming on. And
Appreciate it.
so, kind of my first question for everybody to introduce people who maybe haven't watched or that other podcast or are familiar. So, what is fascia and fascia training?
Yeah, so I would explain it to anyone, general public or even clients. Fascia itself is basically a collagen, soft tissue that is, basically encompassed within your organs, your muscles, your skeletal systems, nervous system. That's what holds together that muscular system and the skeletal system. Without that, basically your body will be just muscles and bones, but there is no way for your body to propel, to receive sensory receptors back and forth, going down left and right through your arms, through your down through your head to your skull. I mean, it's one of the missing systems that people who've done cadavers, dissection of the human body, they leave out, and that is an important part for any athletic performance. Of course, every day wear and tear, whether it's chronic or an acute injury, sometimes we overlook the fascia, which has only been brought up to light maybe within the past, couple decades. But just with this whole movement since the pandemic, I feel a lot of people have seen the Stretch Zone or Stretch Lab, these boutique stretching places, pop out of nowhere. And so fascia itself is basically different from what we do at through Stretch2Win. That's where I got my educations from and certification. It's very different because it's science-based, very gentle as far as we've never had people, basically coming in, getting injured and re-injured. It's a modality that is just magical. You have to get onto the table and experience it, because I myself had experienced it this past summer. And so I've only been doing this fascial stretch therapy through Stretch2Win since July of this year, 2024. And it's changed my life. Changed my life as far as how the body can adapt and even react to just one simple session. So that's what fascia is. It's this thing that's encompassed within you and through your body.
So when anybody's doing any sort of stretching, and it's always been, at least for me, the conventional wisdom is I'm stretching the muscles out. I'm stretching the muscle fibers out. And through that process, you become more flexible. But the more I learn about fascia, it seems that when you're doing stretches, obviously you are stretching the muscles. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're the expert, not me. But probably the more important aspect is the fascia stretching or the fascia conditioning, because what's causing your body to tighten up and sort of be stiff, from what I've come to learn, is more fascial than muscular. Not to say you can't have muscular problems, but would you say, is that true, or am I missing the mark on that somehow?
Yeah. So from one of my great colleagues, Sophia Murphy, she really explains well as far as this fascia. And so fascia in itself, it needs hydration. So if you're very rigid or if you're very stiff, it's probably because you're not getting enough hydration, water. And that's what fascia, it's collagen. I mean, it's very liquid. It forms, it moves, it has to glide, So if you're just stretching muscle, that's probably like more of a manual work through a physical therapist. But with fascia, there's several different lines. We call it the fascial line. That's something that, of course, I can explain, or you can actually look into through anatomy trains who Robert Schleip, Tom Myers. They're some of the pioneers of study on fascia. So that's great resource for anyone who is interested about learning these fascial lines. And that's what, we're stretching is these different lines that come across your body, whether if it's through your arms, to the back of your head, to the front, deep inside. There's these fascial lines that when we're stretching on this table, we're finding ways. So how I like to explain it also is that, let's say, for instance, right now, Jacob, tell me, where are you currently feeling any tightness? Or I guess in the past a couple weeks.
Everywhere. But generally speaking, I've got really tight neck and kind of like upper traps. That's pretty common for me.
Is it because what you do for work, sitting at a desk, or just...
stress and sitting for long periods of time. That would be my guess.
Sure. And it's common. I mean, because you think about it, the head is onto this, your head and your spine, it's there, holds up basically your shoulders, holding everything up. The way that we're sitting nowadays, as you can see, whether if we're looking at a screen, on our phone, it wears on your body. And so what I found is that through these stretches, we're able to figure out if it's tightness here, definitely we can stretch it out, whether if it's through the neck, the shoulders, even the lats, so upper body. But like I said, different fascial lines, there's some parts where it goes all the way down through your back, down to your glutes, down to your hamstring. I mean, it's intricate. It's just a thing that we can't just fix by just stretching. We also have to address certain things, So this is just a modality that's great to integrate with different ones, such as massage. If you've done chiropractic work, acupuncture, dry needling. I mean, they're just different modalities. Cupping. There's so much that you can incorporate into your practice or into your recovery or your day-to-day just to relax. It's something that people have to get onto the table and to experience, because I can tell I can go on, but I don't know about you. I rather experience to understand than me explaining, telling you verbally.
Yeah, it is. It is one of those. It is one of those things, because what Kyler does is he does certain poses. He doesn't use a table. And believe me, I want to get into the table because I'm fascinated by that aspect of it. In his book, he has a series of poses you do, and I'm looking at these and I'm like, these don't seem that intense, I mean, I'm for a guy in his late 30s, I'm fairly flexible. I'm not a gymnast or anything, but for a guy in his late 30s, I'm decently flexible. And I'm starting to do some of these poses and it's hurting in places I didn't know existed. These are
Gotcha.
things that have probably never been properly stretched before in my entire life, and I'm feeling it. And it's one of those things where it's like it shouldn't feel this way, right? So the first time I did those series of poses, so I really want to try the table. And is that what the FST is?
Yes, correct. So FST, people, you can call it fascial stretch therapy, fascia stretch therapy, or you can brand it as Frederick stretch therapy. And so the reason why we call it Frederick stretch therapy is because of Ann and Chris Frederick. They are the originators, founders of the Stretch2Go Institute, based out in Tempe, Arizona. So, they've been doing this as far as the work of fascial for over 30 years, both. And I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the Stretch2Go, because people probably have never heard about Stretch2Go or like the originator of, Chris and Ann. But basically, they are dancers. They have dance backgrounds. She was a ballet. She did dance. So did Chris. Worked with, the New York Ballet team. And also they're both physical therapists. And so with that background, and was basically trying to figure out ways to give these NFL players, especially their O-line, D-line players. I mean, she's only like 5'2" maybe. Where's the short, stout lady? So she was trying to figure out a way to leverage herself, but by not getting hurt. And, if you can imagine. So that, and also she had to find a way to strap these guys in. So the way that she uses a bench press, like a bench, and then like those lifting belts, she would strap them on. And then that's how she would figure out ways to use her leverage of her body to get them into a stretch. And so with her background with dance, that's how she was able to come up with these different stretches that's stretching these different fascial lines. That gave them, immediate results, or, results in the next couple of days, where, of course, it kind of exploded. And so with their practice and with their research, their background in the fascial industry, they've been doing this for 30 years, teaching so many thousands of practitioners like myself with, different backgrounds in healthcare or in fitness, just looking to basically help with their clients, their patients, getting them into a place where they can feel relief, getting them out of a situation where they're not feeling those chronic pains. Or my goal is to, of course, help people so that they don't have to get, surgeries or unnecessary surgeries, injections, medications, because there are ways. I mean, I feel like not everyone needs to be on it if they're not in that dire situation. And that's the great part about us as fascial stretch practitioners, that we're able to offer that for our patients and our clients in just, matter of sessions, whether if it's one session or a couple months down the road or years. And so that's the, short story of how Stretch2Go got started. And they have a location in Canada, and of course in Tempe, and then they just started out in Australia as well. So they're growing. They've also founded a fascia research society, and so they're one of the founders as well, with the Anatomy Trains founder Thomas Myers and Robert Schleip, and many others that you can look into. So it's a growing field, but not growing. But as far as like, there's a lot of validity and like legitimacy of what they're doing, because there's, like I said, people who are not just doing fascia stretch, but people who are studying fascia in itself.
I can vouch for it.
Yeah. So exactly. So, I've come to become, like yourself, be more obsessed about this, because it's probably not taught in school anywhere.
I had never heard of it, and it's one of those things. So I'm very much a skeptic at heart. You hear all these things, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen a friend of mine get this supplement that's going to change their lives, and there's no difference whatsoever. So when a friend of a friend is talking about this stuff, we had him as a guest on another podcast, and I'm just kind of like, okay, I'll listen, but I'm not just going to buy it. And then as he's explaining all this, I become the one asking the questions. And I'm like, wait, hang on, go back. Because, and kudos to him, because he explained it very well. But yeah, it's like, this is stuff I never even heard of. It's absolutely not taught in school, at least not at the basic level. I'm sure maybe once you get into, more in-depth collegiate level anatomy, maybe, but even then, I doubt it. Because the other question I was going to ask you is, and you kind of touched on it, about how you're basically preventing people from needing surgeries or medications. So is the fascia training sort of industry, I hate to use the word industry because it makes it sound like it's all about profit, but I mean, it is an industry, are you guys getting pushback from like the traditional, what would you call that? Like medical industry?
Oh man, I think that's a debate for sure, an ongoing debate, because I was talking to another person I actually interviewed on my podcast, on my Stretch2Go podcast, and his background has been in more sports, so professional sports. And Chris and Ann have actually gone out, taught these, athletic therapists, athletic trainers on fascial stretch itself. So like, it's crazy because they're being taught, they're introduced, this can help with athletic performance as far as recovery, injury prevention, you name it, agility, speed. So there's a lot of benefits. I think some of these athletic trainers or strength and conditioning coaches, they probably are feeling this movement of, fascial stretch coming in, or they're probably feeling like, oh, they're going to try to take over my position, because strength and conditioning coaches are obviously there to, help with their athletes to perform the best, get strong. But I think there's a missing piece. This missing piece is this stretch to win. I mean, what stretch to win can offer for their athletes. And granted, there are practitioners who are certified in FST who are in professional sports performing this, whether if they're massage therapists, athletic trainers. There's numerous of them. I've come to find out that they're offering this to their athletes. So there might be, and our hope and our goal is that, of course, fascial stretch can become prescribed maybe by doctors if they can see that this is something that patients can come back and, instead of having to go get surgery, they can do this, or even post surgery on just a way to recover with physical therapists. So that's
I can definitely see that.
And that's where I feel with physical therapists and chiropractors, they see it. They see that this is awesome for their clients, but maybe not the medical, as far as like surgeons.
It's one of those things where I think personally, which I'm not even in the industry, I've just, as I see it, I think this is one of those things that'll slowly start to become integrated into the sort of industry at large, because this is anecdotal, but I think if anybody's ever, started lifting weights coming from a different sort of fitness, because I've done martial arts pretty much my whole life, and flexibility is big. I did Taekwondo,
Yes.
Flexibility is huge. When I started lifting weights, I noticed that, at least in the immediate, that I was getting stronger. I was putting on muscle mass, but I was losing some of my flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
So, the stretching is an important component that you have to make sure you keep doing if you don't want to lose your flexibility, which flexibility is huge. Even for if you just lift weights, you still want to be flexible because it helps prevent injury, so it's just good all around. Flexibility is especially for guys. Like I feel like girls do a much better job of making sure that they remain flexible and loose and limber, but guys are usually all about just getting size, especially when it comes to lifting weights. So
Sure.
guys, don't be afraid to stretch. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
It helps you bend down when you're older.
Yeah, that, and even like running after, like I think agility too is something that you lose. And so that of course comes down to the fascial network, like not being trained. And so there's a lot of great people out there, I feel, in the industry of health and fitness who see fascial network, the fascial training as its importance, like Bill Parisi. I don't know if you heard of Bill Parisi. He has a Parisi Speed Training School nationwide, worldwide actually. And he himself wrote a book called Fascial Training. So it's all about, basically how athletes can train properly so that they can work on their agility through the, fascial system. It's something I think people should look into also. And granted, anyone who is an everyday warrior, maybe just look into it and see like, okay, what is fascia? How does it affect my, everyday, or even like if you're going to the gym, like how does it affect me post recovery or even warming up? So.
Forsan Records is proud to introduce the newest album from Valena, including the singles Cut Me to the Quick, and Remedy. Valena, Save Me From Myself, available now wherever you get your music.
sort of going into my story, a few years ago, I was just doing really good. I was doing really, really good. Ironically, during the pandemic, I lost like 30 pounds because
Awesome, dude.
I couldn't go to the gym. I wasn't lifting consistently at that time, but I was doing, I've done martial arts my whole life, but at the time, and still am, I'm training in Krav Maga, but we couldn't go in and do classes during the pandemic because everything was on lockdown. So what I did, I don't know, are you familiar with DDP yoga?
No, I haven't. Please.
Okay. So it's kind of if you know, you know. Wrestling fans know what it is because they advertise on every wrestling podcast ever. But and plus, Diamond Dallas Page is a retired pro wrestler. So if you're a wrestling fan, you know DDP Yoga or DDPY because they don't like to call it yoga because yoga's for chicks, right? That's but so I heard about it for years, and it was actually after I watched a video that he put out about a man named Arthur Borman who was a retired paratrooper who, because of injuries sustained jumping out of planes for a living, he couldn't walk unassisted. He had braces on his legs and had to use crutches. And I think I can't remember if it was 18 months or 23 months for him, but it was one of those two between starting that and then to where he got after that time. He was running, standing on his head.
Mm,
Obviously lost a ton of weight because it's not even the point of it. The point is mobility, but the nature of the workout is pretty intense cardio, which is hilarious because you're standing still. The first time I did it, I realized I got my pulse up to, not quite to 100, but 100 beats per minute. And I have a resting heart rate of about 64. So yeah, and you're just standing still. It's wild. Like it's not as intense as like a sprint or anything, but it's wild what you can do standing still. But after I watched that video, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I've heard about it for like a year and a half. I'm gonna do it. So I did, and that was basically all I could do. That and YouTube videos of like workouts you can do at home. That was pretty
hmm
much it. And then tweaking diet, of course, because that's the unfortunate part is you can't outwork a bad diet. But
Yeah.
doing all that, I got down to certainly the slimmest I'd been since high school. Then I had a surgery and majorly fell off the wagon. So still trying to get back on there. But one of the things I did was I started lifting weights. So then I had a double whammy because I got bigger because I put on more fat, but I also put on more muscle. So
Uh-huh.
it was the worst of both worlds. My shirts were too small for two different reasons. It was terrible. But I did notice, like I said, I did notice that my flexibility went down a bit. But DDP yoga, I think DDP yoga does fascial training without knowing it's fascial conditioning. Yeah, it's one of those things because stretching's paramount, but also
hmm
strengthening ligaments and tendons. That's part of it. Flexibility. So it's like I think once DDP learns about fascia, he'll just start. He won't have to change anything. He'll just start calling it fascial conditioning
Mm.
because it's kind of what he's already doing. There's a lot of
Yeah.
parallels there. But
Yeah. I'll be happy to learn more about it. Maybe reach out to him. Who knows?
I'm telling you, the first fascia trainer that reaches out to DDP, you'll spread the word like wildfire because and I'm a member. He's got a very large community of people who
hmm
he's helped with this program, and he's always tweaking it too because we're always learning new things about the human body and how it works, right? he's
Yeah.
now he's now on a mission to help people that are not actually paralyzed but people that are because of mobility issues can't even stand effectively. Like they can stand but
Mm.
it's tough because obviously you can't treat legitimate paralysis with these kinds, although maybe you can. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, he's helping people he's calling them chair ridden, and he's helping them
Mm.
stand up and get mobile again. And it's wild. He's just
Yeah.
constantly tweaking the program. So yeah, once he starts calling it fascial, I think you'll see a pretty quick switch in some terminology because I think that's what'll happen. I think it'll just be a change in terminology because a lot of this stuff seems to be stuff a lot of people are already doing, but with a
Mm.
misunderstanding of what's actually being treated. Like I said at the beginning, I always thought I was stretching muscles, where
hmm
it seems like I'm stretching muscles and fascial tissue. It's just I'm such a nerd on this now because ever since I learned about it, I'm like, this is fascinating. Why is this not being shouted from the rooftops? It turns out it is, but
hmm
it's hard to get people to change, especially when they're
Yeah.
making money.
Sure. And then I think like I said, it's one of those things like I think once the general, science and medicine sees that this can be an alternative way for, therapeutic purposes, then the legitimacy will basically be shown that this is, it's been proven, it's science-based. It's not just some voodoo magic. Like, it's fascia, it's your body, it's inside there. So people don't know like what it is. It's a mysterious thing, but humans have been around for so long that, I think we just have never looked into depth of that layer of fascia. So
Yeah, which that's wild to me though, because it's not just fascia. It's also like I marvel at the fact because you said it perfectly. Humans have been around for a while. We've been doing this humanity thing for longer than modern medicine has been around for sure. And yet, at least in the US,
mhm.
it still boggles my mind that diet and exercise are not the most prescribed thing from doctors. I just because it solves, I don't know what the actual numbers are, but it solves
Mhm.
so many issues, but it doesn't make money, at least not for the doctors in the medical industry. Makes a
Of
lot of
course
money for
not.
gyms, but
Yeah,
but there's
and
a
the
lot of
pharmaceuticals.
yeah, but there's a lot of insurance companies that
Uh-huh.
even cover the cost of a gym membership. So that's encouraging, even though
Uh-huh.
comparatively speaking, it's way cheaper to go to a gym than to be on a medication for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So, I
And
mean,
so,
that's wild. But I think once we as a society, I think once we sort, I think it's coming because so much stuff is coming out that's undeniable now, where it's like,
mhm.
I can remember a time, and I'm not that old. I can remember a time when if you told somebody in the medical field that you were gonna, and I'm not condoning this, this is just an example because I know people who have done it, is people that say went on like the keto diet, the ketogenic diet, would have been told you can't do that, you'll die. Like that will absolutely destroy your body. You can't. And yet people started doing it, and a lot of people have at least presumably become healthier for it. It's not for
Mhm.
everybody, but
Yeah.
like I know I can't do it. I like vegetables too much.
Mhm.
That's weird. That's really
Yeah.
weird, I know. But I got a friend,
Yeah.
yeah, my best friend is he's not strictly carnivore, but he tries to do. And I mean, he's lost a ton of weight and he feels better, and he suffers from chronic pain as well.
Mhm.
So it's helping him at least little by little. But once that sort of change in the public perception happens, I think fascia training and just basic diet will become kind of like the main staple. And I look forward to that day.
Yeah, I guess talking about nutrition, with nutrition, like not even talking about fascia, but like your body is meant to be eating whole foods, fruit from the ground, fruit from the tree. It should not be man-made. If it
Yeah.
is man-made, then it's probably not how people have, been living for thousands of years, millennia. So like they've survived without these man-made things. So I think it's important that people go back to the roots and how they've survived. I know nutritionists, dietitians, I don't know, maybe they can tell me that, these man-made artificial ingredients can help, or, it's proven scientifically, whatever it is, it all comes back down to the whole nutritious food. And it's crazy. Like you're saying, like it's expensive to eat healthy. It should not be expensive. Um,
Yeah, I know. People around the world ironically do it every day.
yeah.
Well, I always tell this story because I was fortunate enough a few years ago to travel to what I refer to real Mexico, not like Cancun or Cozumel. Like I went down to Michoacan, which is it's not like third world or anything, but it's not often visited by American tourists. So when you look around and you're only white guy, you can see you're pretty sure you're in real Mexico. It's one of those things where English is not an option really.
Uh,
So thank God I spoke at least a little bit of Spanish. But on the conventional, at least for an American in the conventional sense, I ate like garbage the whole time I was there. It was a lot of meat, potatoes, and bread. Like it was, you know, and yet I I lost a little bit of weight when I was there, which I'm not fooling myself. We did a lot of walking. It was pretty active, but I also felt amazing. I felt incredible. And everybody was saying like, hey, the food might make you a little sick at first, but you'll be
mhm.
fine. I didn't get sick at all. I was there for 14 days and then I came back to the US and I was sick for 2 weeks.
That's crazy.
I'm not even joking. I started eating, food bought in the US. Sometimes the same
Mhm.
stuff, like we were eating beef and chicken down there. But I came back home and I got sick for 2 weeks. I'm just constantly amazed. And that's the thing. I was very much a skeptic because I was one of those people originally who was like, food is food. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they're doing to it, but it's not the same. It's not.
Mm-mm.
It's demonstrably not the same. And you always hear people talk about how like, yeah, people in Italy they eat a ton of pasta and yet they look like this. Well,
Yeah.
the reason
Well,
being
it's
is when they make their pasta, they make it out of whole foods and they
mm-hmm.
basically just
From
reshape it.
scratch.
Yeah, from
Yeah,
scratch.
from scratch. Yeah.
And it's like 4 ingredient. The other one, this makes me laugh. So I did make a change. I was mistakenly under the impression that I should shy away from olive oil. I was getting it confused with vegetable oil. So I said, okay, I'll start cooking with butter.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to go buy butter. And here's the thing. I know country crock is crap, but
It
I
is.
was looking in the butter section, and to my horror, I was checking the ingredients. Stuff that
Uh-huh.
says butter on it is not even butter.
No.
So
Yeah.
I actually had to look. I had to look for real butter. So I ended up buying Kerrygold, and even all of their stuff isn't all butter. You have to get the one that only has like 3 ingredients. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to read. I was horrified. So being like, I thought I'd been eating legitimate butter like my whole life, and it turns out probably not.
Yeah. And I think that's where going back to like you're saying earlier about like how nutrition is a key thing that people can overcome a lot of these epidemic of diseases, because it is health. I mean, health is what you put into your body. It'll show,
Mhm.
whether if it's autoimmune disease, whether if it's, flare-ups from, I don't know, anything. But the food is what we put in, and it should be the cleanest. It should be the most purest form, with a lot of these additives that's packaged. And I'm all for that because I think it'll help people to maybe stave off from getting on pills or injuries, especially athletes.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's one thing is like if they can see the benefit of eating clean and healthy, and they're these high performing athletes, why can't we? For just living a life,
It
we shouldn't be eating
usually,
like
yeah,
garbage.
it usually comes down to cost and knowledge. It's to
Mhm.
me, a lot of people say cost, which is true. It's like you said earlier, it's expensive to eat healthy. It really is. But the other thing that I chalk it up more so is most of the time people think they're buying something healthy when they're not because they
Mhm.
don't know. They don't know. The package says low fat, made with whole ingredients, but then you read the label and it's this isn't even English. Like I don't know what this is, you know.
Yeah,
And I don't know. I'm usually not one for passing legislation, but I don't know, man. I'm kind of the opinion that should be illegal. Like you can't market something as a healthy food if it's not.
hmm well,
Like I
and
just
the
think
thing
that's
is
wrong.
that well, a lot of these European nations or even Asian countries, like there are certain things that are banned
Hmm.
that we use in our food system. And
Yeah,
so that kind of gives me a red flag. Like, why are we along a first world country with all these resources? And I mean, we should be eating the cleanest. We should be eating the most abundant food, but yet we're feeding people crap, like even
I
kids.
know. It's wild. My favorite is always the because I lived it. Um,
Uh-huh.
anybody who went to school in certainly by in the 90s, early 2000s, and probably before then.
Lunchables.
Not just I mean school lunch. Like you can
Oh,
find it on the internet. They compare like an American school lunch to like one from Japan, one from Finland, one from you know basically any other developed country, and it's
hmm
like this is horrifying. And their food actually looks better too. Like it's not even a comparison of like, oh yeah, I mean I know that's healthy, but this looks better. No, their food even looks better. It's insane. Like it looks like it tastes better too. It's much more appealing, and yet it's probably cost. It almost always comes down to money, but it's like I think that's number one. I think if you really want to make a change, is you can start there by just mandating that hey, if you're going to give it to students in a school, it's got to meet certain
hmm
nutritional guidelines
yeah,
point blank. It just has to, and it would be
yeah.
easy, but there's too many backroom deals being done. It's insane. And then the fact that physical education is disappearing from schools too. Like
Yo, that's true. Uh-huh.
they should be teaching kids about fascia. in
Oh
health
yeah,
class and
that's
gym class. They absolutely
mhm,
should, because kids are flexible already. So get them in a good
yeah.
habit, man. It's wild
hmm
to me.
The physical fitness and like nutrition, like those are two things that you probably aren't taught even like from the time you graduate high school or even college. Like like you say, how to read a label or like how to properly fuel yourself if you're working out. I mean, those things you have to figure out. It seems like for some reason from the time you're 18 till or whenever you graduate college till you die, like there's this huge many years that you should be learning these things, but no, you're not. There's a lot in society that we could do better as far as educating these younger generations, but it all comes down to is there a movement by us, the people? We have to be pushing it. Legislation, government, we can't really rely on it. It's what else are we teaching to our kids? And of course those in our circle, because I feel, and this is facts, but what you feed your kids and you normalize it, they're going to be used to it. And then once they go out on their own, they should have a good foundation
It
of
becomes normal for
this.
them. Yep.
Yeah. So like, it's important. It's important for all of us to kind of look into that, because the fact that maybe down the road, I mean, we'll see a lot of changes in our food system. I mean, hope it might be different. I don't know what it is in the next 150 years. So hopefully,
I really hope that I really, really hope that people 100 years from now look back in the history books and
mhm,
refer to sort of really the period between probably the 80s to, hopefully it stops soon, but it's the period where just like they just had no idea what they were doing. Like they were eating poison, and they were being told that exercise was bad for them, and they call it the delusional years, like
mhm,
I really, really hope that's true, because it's so scary, man. Like, and then you've got people, which granted, people in authority would never say this, thank God, but there are people out there that are decrying exercise and saying that it's not necessary, or in some really extreme cases that it's unhealthy, and I'm just like, what? Yeah, because, anybody who looks conventionally attractive totally gets there by doing nothing. Or like conventionally
mhm.
healthy, even, not even just the physical. That's just not true. There are some anomalies out there for sure, but those are usually cases of like, how are they still alive? Not so much that like they're the pinnacle of health.
Stop wasting your time on manually editing your videos. The secret AI tool will do the work for you. One of the best things about it is that it gives your video the potential to go viral. Visit this page, sign in, create a project by clicking on this button. Choose a video that you want to use. Click on the AI clip button. Wait for the magic. It is scanning through the video and looking for the parts that has the potential to go viral. Instead of editing the video by yourself, it does the work for you. It even generates headline and captions which fit your video. Another surprise is that they generate video description or social post for you to use. Once done, click Export to Post.
So, as far as Stretch2Go is concerned, is the method you guys use any different from other fascia trainers out there? Or I guess is what makes you guys unique?
I think it's just like I said, with FST, it's a table based, because there are different, I think, stretch techniques out there that you could do on the floor, sitting down. Ours is table based, so massage table, and of course it should be pain free. But there's different levels actually. So I'm a level 1 stretch therapist. There's level 4 now that they just came out with. So in each level, we're unlocking different areas of the body, the fascial lines. And as you go to these courses, you learn more about the different modality stretches and where you're working on. So I'm actually going to take my level 2 in 2 months up in Canada, but it's definitely different because with fascia training, let's say like if you've done like roping or if you've ever done like trigger point, active release technique, those are all still in the realm of fascia itself, I guess. So for us, it's just this is a a fascial stretch based technique. It's nothing different. It's still different type of manual work with our hands, you know. I think with different stretch lab, stretch zone, they're all working on the PNF, which is the proprio neuromuscular facilitation, just of, contracting the muscle and relaxing it so you can get into a deeper range of motion. So it's different. And like I said, with the fascial lines, since Stretch2Win is all about, these fascial lines that we're stretching, these different stretches will help pull and move through those rather than just holding as a static stretch, for a few seconds. So that's different. I mean, so like I said, if you've gone to a stretch zone or stretch lab, you might feel a stretch, yeah. And they'll ask you like, how is it level, 3 or 5? I've only been there once, but it's different. And a lot of the clients that I've had or people I've heard also is that they've gone there, but have not seen results, or they were injured because maybe this person was not trained properly, or they do have a lot of high turnovers for sure. But for people who are doing FST, these are people who are, going to these courses and getting continuing education so that they can provide this type of service, whether if it's a standalone or with their, personal training, acupuncture, or you name it. There's different people who incorporate it, even with massage. So it's awesome. So that's what makes us unique, is that with FST, you can also incorporate into these different types of body work. So if you ever go to stretch2win.com, there's a place that you can find a practitioner near you. So even yourself, actually, I wouldn't mind if you go check it out sometime later, just see who is there in there, contact them, say, hey, I'd love to, get a quick demo, or how much do you charge? Go get a session, and they'll be able to explain to you like the differences, or, give you a session so that you can experience it. And that's all we really want, is the people to experience it, get on the table, experience it. And of course, kind of feel that the difference of a stretch than the fascial stretch therapy. So
I wasn't familiar with the table base. So basically that process is you get somebody on the table, and then is it sort of just like a guided stretch routine where obviously
yeah,
somebody's helping you?
sure. It's more passive. So, as the client, you'll be laying there on the table, and the practitioner itself will, assess, obviously, from the ground up, feet, check your ankles, check your rotation of, the hips. Those are the big capsules is the hips, shoulder joint, neck, even down to the ankle. So just assessing those, where there are restrictions, where there's limitations. And of course, from there to assessment, then they would, of course, check your range of motion, see where it is, where it stops, go from there. And then, of course, the whole game plan is to see, get a better range of motion. Hopefully you can, be able to feel that release from the tension that's been built up. But also with fascia stretch, we incorporate traction, which is basically giving space to the joint capsule. So especially if we're pulling on the leg from the ankle, that's giving space from the hip socket right here. And so people feel a lot of relief from there because of their lower back or the hip. Or sometimes in, just in the hip area, but it's amazing. So that's why we also incorporate into the stretches is the traction, along with PNF also. But there's so much, because like I said, if we were to just hold a stretch for so long, and just do it several times, I think you could get injured. But with fascial stretch therapy, it's not. It should be injury free. It should be pain free at all. And we always ask everyone, like, how I do is I assess before, check their range of motion, check their flexibility, on the floor, basically standing up, and then of course we always reassess to see if there was an improvement, whether if it's in a 10-minute short demo session, or even an hour or 30-minute session. So it's more or less, how does that one person that's on the table feel afterwards, or even the next day, because it's a lasting effect. And I think that's the biggest thing that with this Stretch2Win FST, is that people are able to give their review of, this is incredible. I've never felt this loose or this mobile. I was able to walk again. I was able to not feel pain, whether if it's migraines or lower back issues. Those are so common that people have come back to saying, this is something I've never felt and never experienced for so long. And so I love those stories. It's real life. And it's like I said in my podcast, we always talk about the real life stories and the success stories that we hear from practitioners from all over the world who are actually doing this, because it's them who makes this really feel to us as practitioners like this is something we're doing. We're helping people, honestly. Like I'm not selling people. I'm actually helping healing people's bodies.
Kind of want to get on the table right now. So when did you like what started this path for you? Because like you said, fascia training is still somewhat as far as in the zeitgeist, it's still somewhat new. So like how did you get exposed to it and what made you want to jump in and start helping people in this way?
My background is basically marketing and sales. That's what I did mostly growing up, right out of college. But I got into maybe last year, I was working at a physical therapy clinic here locally. And with a small business, they were able to get me into the stretch certification through NASM. And, they wanted to incorporate some assisted stretching. So in essence, what I do, it is assisted stretching, like in a big realm of thing, because literally I'm helping assisting someone stretch. But so I was doing this for a year, helping those who are demographically probably 50 to 80 years old. They were either discharged from their physical therapy treatment program, and they just wanted to, continue their progress. And so that's where the owner came to me and said, hey, we would love to do a assisted stretch program. Would you like to do it? Sure. I took the NASM certification, but I didn't know what the heck I was doing, of course. But I was seeing progress just by doing assisted stretching. I was like, okay, if I was seeing people, on a weekly basis and they're feeling great, I wonder if there's a modality or a way I can actually get certified and be taught how to do this. Because this type of work, it's hard to just go online and like get a certification and do it. Like you can't. It's nearly impossible. But so I researched, and I came upon some people who were doing the stretch with the strap. So it says Stretch to Win. So I was like, that's curious. So I went down this rabbit hole for a few months. Eventually I went online, paid my fee so I can go take the course. And I was basically there for a whole week, just stretching people. So from the course, the Stretch to Win course, it's a Monday to Friday type of thing where you're stretching from 9 to 6, different bodies, different people. The instructors are there, one-on-one with you, showing you, and you get to stretch the instructor so you can get a feel and they can get a feedback right away, which is awesome. So they're training the way that they do it at Stretch to Win. It's very, like I said, it's a hands-on experience where you get to feel yourself doing it, and then you get the feedback from the instructor, whether or not, or from whoever it is. Just that constructive criticism. It helps you as the person who's working on someone to gain that. And so after that, I think that's when I was like, all right, I think I can do this. So after the course was done, I came back and I was like, I'm going to make this as a business. And since July, I've been doing this basically wholly. So now I'm working at a chiropractic clinic, offering my service on Mondays and Thursdays. So it's been awesome, man.
Sounds like it. That's like a really great course. And so it was a 7-day thing, or was it longer?
No, it's from like just Monday to Friday.
Monday through Friday.
Yeah, but from like 9 to 6, the instructors are there. Of course, I think there was about 30 of us in a class or so, and actually from all walks of life, different backgrounds, different places. Mostly Canada because I went up there. But the headquarters is in Arizona, so since I'm on the East Coast, it just made more sense for me to just drive up there rather than fly across to the West Coast. But like I said, with the different levels, so level 1, level 2, level 3 or 4. So 3 and 4 currently is being offered in Arizona. I think level 3 is they're gonna start doing that in Canada as well. So we'll see. But I would still love to meet Anne and Chris in person, the founders, because they're the ones out there in Arizona teaching this still. So I would still love to meet them in person and kind of pick their brain, because it's one of those things, like if you got into a thing like this, like you want to meet them and pick their brain just so you can get that experience, like, dang, this is awesome. But
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
And you mentioned that it's not like you take a week course and then you're done. Like there's continuing education and there's always more training and that kind of stuff, which is that's very good
Yeah.
because there's always new information coming out, right? And
Hmm.
I would think as a practitioner, you would be expected to keep up on, training
Yeah.
and learning new things all the time. Absolutely.
Yeah. There's
And
actually, they require you to get recertified every 2 years as well. So, to keep up your certification through Stretch to Win, you know what you're doing. Some people probably haven't, and so they fall off. They're not on the director anymore. So it's interesting though. I just want to throw this out. There's been a lot of people who taken what Stretch to Win have done and make it into their own type of stretching and incorporating different things. But at the same time, that's awesome. To see that people can take different aspects of what they learn, and of course, not take away from what Chris and Ann have done, but find different pieces of the body work. Whether if it's Thai massage, whether if it's acupuncture, and make it into their own modality or method. And I think that's the great thing about this too, is that like I said, you can incorporate to different modalities and help different type of people rather than just stretching. You can also throw in your services that you typically offer. So,
oh, sure. And plus the fact too, another thing that I think again, as a society, we're starting to realize is that no two people are exactly alike. So when it comes to fitness or health, it's not a one size fits all sort of thing. So what might work for John won't work for Mary, and what works for Mary might not work for Tom.
sure.
Everybody just kind of has to find their program. And when you have a program that's flexible and can be integrated into other things, it's like you said, it's tremendous because while acupuncture might not do anything for me personally, that doesn't mean, my neighbor down the street, it might change their life.
Hmm.
And fascial training integrated with that it's amazing. I cannot speak any more highly of it because it will change your life. It's wild to me how something as seemingly simple as just doing some very specific stretching can really improve your quality of life, but it absolutely can. And then you had said earlier, so you and your services are located in Baltimore, correct?
Yes, correct. Yep. So I serve the greater Baltimore area. So it ranges from like Baltimore all the way to Annapolis, even down to a different county right next to where I'm at. So I'm mobile, but I also have a studio here in Baltimore. And then, like I say, I work in a chiro right now in the Baltimore area. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I mean, who knows in the next few years if I'll have my own space, outside of my studio. But right now I'm just trying to find, that whoever it is that needs me and kind of going to them, offer my services, or even working, collaborating with different businesses, individuals, because there's not, I would say, a whole ton of fascial stretch practitioners certified like here in Maryland. But there's a lot of people who have actually been doing this longer than I have. And they've kind of laid down the ground where, I talk about FST and they're like, oh yeah, I've been stretched by, there's just two people that come to mind, Sarah and Marcus. They're only the original people here. They've been certified since like 2011, 2010. So number of years, but they're now based off of just straight referrals because they built a name, a brand for themselves, and they don't have to go proactively looking. But me, I'm just a young guy that's, barely 6 months, dude. So I'm still new to this journey, but I'm leaning on these practitioners who have done this because there just needs to be more work done. There's not enough practitioners to the
Yeah,
amount of
there's not
people
enough people
in this state.
providing the service. Yeah, so if you're in the greater Baltimore area, you know where to go. I know a lot of people who have been to or are from Baltimore, but I've never been there myself. What's Baltimore like?
Um, this is actually different because I was living in the Big Island, Hawaii last year, actually. So originally from there,
Oh wow,
I
that's
moved
a
here.
that's a transition.
Yeah. So Baltimore, East Coast lifestyle, super fast pace. I mean, not as friendly, I would say, I guess,
No,
but I mean,
it's not.
it's just the lifestyle, man. Like East Coast life is like go, 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 tough and gruff. There's some things I'm sure I will have to get used to Baltimore, but since I live in Baltimore, I haven't really spent time in Western Maryland, and that's
Mm.
a whole different ballgame. I've only been there probably once, but definitely there's a lot, even on the East Coast of Maryland, which is like the Ocean City out there in Kent Island. That's a different lifestyle too. So the cool part about Maryland, I think, is that you have the shore, the Atlantic Ocean to go to, or you can go to lakes, you can go up the mountains further up west in Western Maryland. And of course, I'm like an hour to the border of Pennsylvania. So like, it's crazy. That's the cool thing about living here. Ever since I moved is that within hours, I can go to so many different states. So
Yeah,
not
that's
like
you're
Georgia.
in that. Yeah, you're in that sort of. Maryland's not a very big state, so you're surrounded by a lot of very different areas. But yeah, it's funny because I'm in Indianapolis, and I always like to joke that you're right, East Coast and West Coast vibes, or in your case, island vibes, very very different. But I like to
Yeah.
kind of half joke that the Midwest is right in the middle because, like, yeah, here time is money, but at the same time, we're a little bit nicer about it. We're just kind of like instead of being like, you know get the F out of my way. It's here. It's like,
Uh-huh.
excuse me, I got things to do. You kind of a little bit more politely assert that time is money.
Yeah.
Yeah, never been to Baltimore, never had a reason, but obviously I want to go because I want to. I haven't actually spent a lot of time on the West Coast, at least in the in the Northeast. I say
hmm
West Coast, I mean East Coast. Been to the Southeast plenty, but that's a whole different sort of thing too. That's a different.
Yeah.
Once you get south of that Mason-Dixon line, it's a different attitude.
Yeah. And like, that's funny too, because I've talked to, several people who are born here in Maryland, and I asked them, like, do you consider this southern states, eastern states? And I think it's a split. It's a split because some people are, if they're old school, they're like, oh, this is a southern state. I'm like, well, where's the southern hospitality? But the
Yeah.
crazy part is that I still hear some southern accents from
You,
people who live here in Maryland.
well,
I'm
because
like,
Virginia's right
uh
there. You know,
yeah,
it's not that far.
that too.
And now I'm failing miserably because my big history nerd. Now I can't remember if Maryland was part of the Confederacy. I don't think it was. I
It
think the
was.
line was. It was. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was.
Yeah,
I
it
was remembering
was.
that.
Yep.
So yeah, that's wild when people think that because you very much think nowadays of Maryland being a northern state, but it's like
Yep. It was
they
one of
were.
the last few states to abolish slavery, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, crazy because, like, with Harriet Tubman, like the Underground Railroad Museum is out here actually. It was pretty cool. I went to go there just to check it out. And just the amount of people who are from Maryland, like Frederick Douglass, like he's from
Yeah.
here. I'm like, dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, for a very small state, it's got a long list of notable, residents. Like a lot of those, Northeast are really just the East Coast in general. Oldest. If you were one of the 13 original colonies, you got a long list. You
Yeah.
got a long list of people. And then you mentioned already that you've got a podcast. So tell me and the viewers a little bit about that. What can they expect on the Stretch2Go podcast?
Yeah. So on the Stretch2Go podcast, the origin and the purpose of it is to create a resource for one, future practitioners who are looking to get certified with Stretch to Win, or just stretch therapy itself, a little bit more on the day of a life, or like just how fascial stretch practitioners through Stretch to Win are incorporating their this practice and modality into their practice. And of course, because I was not finding that when I was doing my research online anywhere or any podcast. I think they were probably, Chris and Ann have been on several podcasts here and there, but I didn't find anyone like say actively looking for, well, how are they using it, or
Yeah, yeah.
who is using it currently.
Yeah, like you might
So
be able to find one episode of a random podcast, but there wasn't like a consistent source.
yeah. And so I wanted to create this space for future, for current practitioners that we can all kind of collaborate, bring in our side of the story, our wins. And the second part is for the general public people who are interested in fascia stretch therapy or just fascia, because not only do I talk about fascia, but I also talk about health, fitness, wellness, alternative health as well, because I feel like that really incorporates into the vibe that I bring to people who are like-minded like myself. And so I wanted that also for people who don't know much about it or learning to come and learn and to, basically be part of this community, because it's something that, it's changed my life. It's helped me to become a better practitioner just by listening to people sharing their stories. And it's helped me too as a business owner of, things that they're doing in their business that I could probably apply or learn from. And then of course, apply into my own practice. So yeah, man, it's, I've released my podcast every Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern. And yeah, I'm always looking for those who are, into the fascial stretch therapy, or who, in health, fitness, wellness, having them on to my podcast and kind of talk about it and go from there.
And then you have another podcast too, right?
Yeah, I do. So my second one is what I originally started. It's called Beyond the Classroom Podcast. So that one is more on things that you should have learned by the time you graduated high school, college, marriage, you have kids. I mean, there are some things you and I could probably attest, like taxes, insurance, how to write a will, like importance of, putting together a budget, talking about, I guess like even relationally, like where do you draw a line with in-laws? Or there's just so much stuff that we as society are not teaching our younger generations, that we have to figure this out from, like I said, the time that you graduate high school till you die. That's 50 plus years that you're like either learning from someone, you're learning it on your own, or you're being influenced by someone that probably you're going to use and it's not going to help you. So I think that's where I want to create this podcast, to pick and choose from different people who are, of course, older than me, learning their wisdom, because, I myself, I'm mid 30s too. So I'm like yourself, like there's some things I wish I should have learned that I can like take back and say, oh, dang, that could have saved me time and money and headaches.
Big, big time. I.e., like being able to read a nutritional label.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So see, look, so that's why I created this podcast, because I want to, find people who I saw in my view successful, or who, of course, are living a lifestyle that, kind of values with the same as me, aligns with my values, I meant, and kind of learn from them, like what can they teach me? What do they think that people should learn? Because yeah, dude, like 18 years old, the first thing you're given is probably a credit card or a loan, and that's going to mess them up. And so that's where I feel like people should be taught, like, no, it's okay to put that aside and not having to buy a brand new car, or like, it's okay. You don't have to go to college right away. There's different avenues.
I can attest personally to that. I really wish somebody, because when I was 18, the last thing I wanted to do was go to school.
Yeah.
Like, especially like I didn't know, I thought I knew what I wanted to do. Turns out I was wrong. And then I didn't even really sit down hardcore and think about that question until I wasn't quite 30, but I think I was almost 30. And then I was like, this is something that I should have thought about when I was 16, 17, certainly by 18. But it was always the same. Like I'm sure it was the same for you. From kindergarten to graduation, it was all about go to college, go to college, go to college. You're a loser if you don't go to college. If you don't want to be a failure at life, you're going to go to college. Then you get to college and they're like, what do you want to study? And you're like, I don't know. I was just told to come here.
Yeah.
It's wild. I think too, I'm very proud. My oldest nephew is he wrestles like in school, and he's good. He played football too. I don't remember. I don't think he's playing this season because I think he wanted to focus on wrestling. But I told him, because everybody's asking him, and he just turned 16. They're like, "What do you want to go to? What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I was the only one who sat him down and said, "Like, man, you're 16. Just wrestle. Like, wrestle and don't flunk out of school, because if you wrestle and you're decent, you'll probably get a scholarship to a really, really good college, and then you can figure it out. But for right now, just wrestle and, get good grade. And he's smart too, so it's not like he's not struggling in the grades department. And I told him, I said, you'll figure it out. But everybody who's trying to get you to decide right now, just don't. Like, you're good.
Yeah.
You're good. And then my other nephew, which he changed his mind here real quick, he decided when he was 11 that he wanted to go in the Marine Corps because that's what his stepfather did. And I'm like, hey, cool, if that's what you. But he got 7 years, so you've got time. You don't have to go down this path right now. So, and
Yeah.
boy, did he do a 180. Now he's into dance of all things,
Dang. Yeah.
like
That's
theater and dance. And I'm like, wow, that was a flip.
something hardcore to something very soft. Yeah.
Well,
That's,
no, he's
uh-huh.
pretty hardcore about it. He taught himself. He
Uh-huh.
was very frustrated. He taught himself how to do a back handspring because his gymnastic teacher was refusing to teach them because they were quote unquote not there yet. And he said,
Uh-huh.
"Screw you! I'll just do it myself." And he did. And now everybody in his class is like, "Teach me how to do it." He was like, "No, you have to do it the way I did it. You just got to keep trying. You just got to figure it out." But
Hmm.
yeah, so that's another podcast. I subscribe to both, by the way. But that's the kind of stuff that I love that people are doing is because you're right. There's so many things that are criminally like. I was fortunate. My mother taught me how to write a check when I was 11 years old.
Hmm.
There are people our age that have never and still
Touch the
don't know.
check.
They've
The
never
check.
like it's not, which again,
Or,
they're fading
uh-huh.
away, right? It's slowly
Hmm.
fading away, but
But even like balancing a checkbook, like you can, if you don't know how to
that's
do a
the big
ledger
one.
of,
That's the big
yeah,
one.
like if you
That's
don't
the
know how
big
to
one.
do it on paper, like, okay, income, expense, like if you don't know how to do that, like that's going to throw you off. And so like, yes, we have a
Yeah,
convenient
yeah.
culture of, contactless payment. I mean, cards, like that's taking the being the lazy way,
Yeah.
but, and so I think that's where, of course, coming back to like, taxes. I mean, that's a big part. I mean, it only comes once a year, but if you don't have that taxes in, you're going to either pay for it or you're going to,
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
it's,
my favorite is always just the fundamental misunderstanding of how taxes work in this country. My favorite is when people who are legitimate business owners, like,
mm-hmm,
and they do this mentality. I call it tripping over dollars to save a penny because they'll be like, "Oh yeah, well I'm going to do this because I can write it off." I'm like, okay, first of all, you can't write it all off, and usually as an individual, at least with your standard deduction, a lot of that stuff that you think like mortgage interest, this is a big one. Most people don't understand that with what the standard deduction is now, you don't even get to write off your mortgage insurance because you
hmm,
don't make enough money to because your standard deduction is bigger, right? So a lot of people they say like they'll buy a house so they can quote or they'll probably the most common one is they won't pay off their mortgage because they want to keep deducting the mortgage insurance. And it's like, do the math. It might be beneficial, but most people don't even know how to do that math. And as somebody who's bad at math, I get it. It's not fun, but somebody will walk you through it. You can
mm-hmm,
learn to see. I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan and I disagree sometimes, but most of the
uh-huh,
time it's like the only time I disagree with him is sometimes his generation age shows a bit because I know yesterday he uploaded a video that went semi-viral because he was cutting up fast food workers saying they weren't in the service industry and it's like no they really are but it's I know what you're saying because he's talking about tipping.
mm-hmm,
It's like I get
yeah,
what you're
oh yeah,
saying, but you should have said that in a very different way. But I know he probably said it to get views too. But you know, at the bare bones level. I also criticize him for accepting credit cards as payment on his website. Just that's just funny to me. I know it's a debit, but I mean, people use credit
yeah,
cards. It's funny. But yeah, generally speaking, it's great advice, and I recommend people listen to him because
mm-hmm.
you know he's helped get a lot more people out of debt than you have.
Yeah. Can I tell you something funny since you
Go for
mentioned
it.
about him? I'm a Dave Ramsey financial coach since 2020.
No, really.
I'm serious. Yeah, I'll show you my credentials. But yeah, dude, I've been doing that for 2020. My story is that my wife and I got out of debt $40,000 in 14 months. So we followed the baby steps.
Wow.
That was mostly on me. Whether it was my student loans was the biggest, car loan, credit cards, Southwest credit cards, of course, phone, medical bills. So we had all those typical things, but got to the point where, we were sick and tired of being sick and tired, living paycheck to paycheck.
So you decided
And,
to live like no one else so you could later live like no one else.
yeah,
Love it.
so that was the plan, and so when I was doing insurance for a number of years, I heard about Dave Ramsey. And so I remember that I was like, let me go back to Dave Ramsey, hear him, and then read the book. Of course, had to get my wife on board because that's how finances typically work. So there we go. Yes, the money makeover. That's awesome. Love it, dude.
This book, seriously, people. I recommend books a lot, but seriously, this is the big one. This one's good,
Mhm.
don't get me wrong, but this is the one. Get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And if you're
Yeah,
married,
so
Financial Peace University is
oh yeah, you have
well
to.
spent.
Yeah, so those things, like I said, finances to me, like I've always been interested in finance. That's how I got into insurance, because I was helping people and working with their finances. But I heard about Dave Ramsey. I'm like, let me try this baby steps that he mentioned about. And so when my wife and I, we applied it to ourselves and we saw the results, because I remember during the COVID pandemic, I was doing those orders online just to pay off my bills and like the debt I meant. And there were late nights and it sucked because we were just sick and tired, and we're chipping into our savings account where I'm like, this is not the lifestyle we wanted to live.
No, yeah.
And so we made a drastic change. Actually, even funnier is that in 2018, this all happened in 2018. And then in 2020, when we moved to Maryland from Texas, we moved in with my in-laws so we could save money. And that's the crazy part is like, why would I, 30-year-old guy, move to my in-laws? Well, I want to get out of that, dude. I want to get out of that hole so bad. Like I was willing to do anything. And so luckily with them, we paid off everything and that, 14 months. And then that kind of gave us a springboard to do what we wanted to do. So ever since then, we haven't looked back, had no credit card. And to this day, my credit score, believe it or not, undeterminable, not zero, undeterminable. It's because we don't have debt. And I don't believe in it. And, we've traveled internationally 2 years ago, and we were doing out a debit card. We didn't have a credit card. Even renting cars, like we had a debit card. So it's doable. It's just people aren't willing to make small habits. And the habits is like the hardest thing for people because we're
that's health and fitness too, though. It's all, and Dave will say, he's like, these are the same rules for, losing weight. Getting out of debt and losing weight is very much the same mental exercise. And oh God, that's hilarious. That's so funny because I just recently, this episode comes out in February, which ties into the thing I wanted to kind of leave on. Tucker Carlson just did an interview with Dave Ramsey, and it made me remember everything I love about Dave Ramsey. Because not only that, he's funny, he's hilarious, but it's I mean, it's real basic stuff, and he'll be the first to admit it. It's just wild to me though, because like I have conversations with even my business partner. It's like I'll just be like, no, dude, and I will admit in business it's a little different. Debt is a little different, not much, but it's a little different. But certainly for personal finance, no, it's like you should never need to go into debt to get ahead. Like it just doesn't make sense. Why do you're gonna owe somebody money to get ahead in your life? That just it doesn't compute if you think about it logically for more than a second.
Yeah.
Or what does Dave always say is like, I never made $1 million off of my credit card points.
Man, you got it down, dude.
I listen to Dave a lot. I listen to Dave a lot because I had people, when I finally had paid my car off, I was adamant. I was like, never again, because I got used to not having a car payment. It was, and then people would say like, why don't you, buy a new car? It's like, because I don't want to finance it. Because I would rather drive a beater POS than have a car payment. And most people just cannot understand that. It doesn't compute for them.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's wild. But yeah. And then going back, you said you moved into your in-laws. I think there needs to be another cultural shift because of the housing market being the way it is. communal living with family has been around significantly longer than people think it has. Like
In
it's
a tribe.
yeah,
In a
like
tribe, yeah.
this idea of leaving, and
Uh-huh.
first of all, this idea
Hmm.
of leaving the house at 18 and never coming home again. First of all,
Hmm.
even in the rest of the world today, that's weird. It's
Mm.
super weird. Like, yeah, maybe when you get married, but even then,
Hmm.
sometimes your in-laws live with you, depending on your society and your financial, like,
Or culturally too.
yeah.
Sometimes in different cultures, yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like
Uh-huh.
sometimes when you get married, your wife's parents move in with you.
Yeah.
Like or just depending on what the living situation is. But this idea, which again was programmed into our heads, being in our late 30s, we were told that
Hmm.
like, yeah, you get kicked out when you're 18. Super weird, historically speaking. This is just something that did not happen. This started happening in realistically the turn of the 20th century. It just,
Mm.
late 19th, early 20th century. It's not an old tradition. It's kind of weird actually. And I think you're going to start seeing, due to just the real estate, the reality of real estate in the United States, you're going to start seeing more commingling of families living in the same place. It's going to happen just by virtue of necessity, because
Yeah.
that 3-bedroom house for $120,000 just is not real anymore. It's
Mm.
not a thing you can do now. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, man. But yeah, that's why I'm passionate about what I do as a financial coach also, because like again, people need what I do and like the type of thinking. Like I'm not doing finance. I'm teaching people of changing habit. That's what I am.
Yeah.
Like I just
Yeah.
help people like see, okay, where are you? Where do you want to go to get from A to B? This is what you need to do.
Yeah.
I'm teaching basic finances, but at the end of the day, if you can't make those changes, I can't help you. And so I'm more of a guide, of getting them to there. But of course, I've yet to see people flocking to financial coaches because they're either going to, social media to learn, or they're going to, these bigger investments. And those are two different people, two different demographics. They're going people who have a lot of money, people who don't have money, who, are just being swayed by influencers. But you need someone who's lived it, who's actually living what they're teaching to show you the way. And that's
Yeah.
where I'm passionate about that too. So
Yeah.
that's something in this year, 2025, I'm actually going to start including in my services in my practices. I'm going to try to help more practitioners to get them to better financial position, because granted, yeah, they probably don't make either a lot or they're starting a business, and I want to be able to help them with the background of financial coaching. So
Yeah.
yeah, man, I'm excited.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, and the sort of the dirty little secret about both personal finance and overall health and fitness is the stuff that works is actually really boring, and it takes a long time, and it takes consistency, and it's not super sexy. Like,
Yeah.
it's you spend less than you make, and it's the exact same thing with calories.
Hmm.
Put out more calories than you bring. It's the same thing, and the problem is it's boring, but it
Hmm.
works.
Yeah.
You just have to follow this. It's the same steps, people. It's the exact same steps. But speaking of, calories and whatnot, which this isn't so much for like losing weight, but like I
Hmm.
said, this episode is in February, so it's still a new year, right? It's only been a month or so. It's still a new year. You can still make some changes. What are some basic things that anyone who's watching this can start doing at home today to help their overall health and mobility as kind of like the first baby step?
Yeah. So I would say just setting aside, whether if it's when you wake up or during the day, or even whenever it's convenient for you, that you can either stretch, get your body moving. My thing is that, of course, drinking a glass of water right away it's helpful. Get your body flushing out all that toxins out there. Get your, body moving is a great thing too. So exercise, movement is medicine, they say. So if you can move a lot more throughout the day, whether if it's, keeping a track on your watch or just reminding yourself, I think that's very important with the sedentary lifestyle that we're living today on, cars, on a chair, we're eating. There's so many times that we are sitting. People are losing that mobility. And I think we have to remind ourselves, whether if you're sitting at a desk, 5 minutes, go take a walk around, do something that to get you out of that situation or the position that you're in. So so one is like, so just stretching, 5-10 minutes. It's great for your body to just kind of limber up or even to wind down towards the evening. So that's something I always probably tell people to do. Hydrate, and then of course just try to get more steps, get movement, because the more that you move, that's what fascia loves. Fascia loves movement. The more you're not moving, the more rigid it becomes and stiff, and that's where you're gonna get the it's just gonna cascade down to stiffness overall. So yeah, man, those are 3 things I say. Very simple.
Well, there you go. You guys can start doing that today. And then obviously check out Stretch2Win, see if there's a practitioner in your area. If you're in Baltimore, go and see Ian here. He can help you out. And then also you said the location in Canada. Where in Canada was that? Because we actually have quite a few Canadian listeners on the podcast.
Yeah. So the Stretch2Win course there in Canada is in Toronto. It's near like Hamilton area. So yeah, still in the greater Toronto area, but yeah, that's where they have the course there. The course is also in Tempe, Arizona, and then of course in Australia. But that just happened. This Australian one just happened in August, so pretty new. But yeah, stretch2win.com. Go in there, find a practitioner so you can learn more what Stretch2Win does, and of course to contact wherever you're listening, reach out to that practitioner to see hey, I would love to get in a stretch session or just learn more about what we're doing, because you never know.
You never know. Well, Ian, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Everybody, be sure to check out both of his podcasts. There will be links in the description below, as well as check out our sponsors. As always, help the podcast. And anything else you want to add, Ian, or do you want to get back to helping people move better?
Yeah, just helping people move better. And of course, get in their body, because this life, there's only one body that we can live in. So I got to take care of it.
Unfortunately, but it is true. Well, thank you again, Ian. It was a pleasure. Love to have you on again down the road when maybe we can talk some personal finance next time.
Ooh, yeah, let's do it. No,
Actually,
appreciate it,
yeah,
Jake.
absolutely. Thank you. And everybody, hope you enjoyed this episode of the Arete Podcast. Like I said before, check out all the links in the description. Help the podcast out. Check out Ian's podcasts, and we will see you guys next month.